Welcome, everyone, to Buddhist Center. Let's begin with a quote from Lord Atisha's Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment. Understand there are persons of three capacities, small, medium, and supreme. I shall write clearly to identify their individual characteristics. Why is the word supreme used for the teachings for beings of great capacity? It's supreme because the motivation is so incredible. In the commentary on the awakening mind, this motivation is referred to as the highest ideal of the Mahayana by Arya Nagarjuna. And when we look at Bodhisattva Shantideva's guide to the Bodhisattva's way of life, the last stanza of the first chapter says, I bow down to the body of him in whom the precious mind is born, and I seek refuge in this source of joy that brings happiness even to those who bring misery or who bring harm, more literally. Those bodhisattvas, it doesn't matter if they're seeing beings as beings who harm them. Bodhisattvas say, that isn't an excuse for me to say, I don't love you. I don't want you to have happiness. That's not an excuse for me to say that I don't have compassion for you. I don't want you to be free from suffering. This ideal, this highest ideal of the Mahayana is called bodhicitta. This mind that wishes to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. And we're so fortunate that we're learning exactly how to generate this mind, this supreme mind, this highest ideal of the Mahayana, week after week after week, and all of the steps that lead up to it, everything that's necessary for us to generate this mind. The great vehicle, or the teachings for beings of great capacity, is called supreme, not only because of the motivation, but supreme because of the sophistication of the paths that are required to get to the sophisticated result of Buddhahood, a result where a being has removed all the afflictive obstructions and the obstructions to omniscience by relying on a bodhisattva path. And one becomes a bodhisattva the moment this awakening mind, the moment that bodhicitta is born in him or her. And as Master Shantideva says in that same chapter, the first chapter of the Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life, that the moment this mind is born in a being, they become a child of the Buddha. They are called the bodhisattva. So we're so fortunate. We're learning how to become bodhisattvas because the only kind of being that can become a Buddha, when we look at the actual vehicle that leads to Buddhahood, the entrance into that vehicle that leads to Buddhahood. So if we were looking at a vehicle or a car that goes from one place to another, if we're looking at it in terms of getting in a car and making sure that that specific road is the one that directly drives us to Buddhahood, if we're looking at it using that analogy, we don't get in the car that starts driving on that path that goes only to Buddhahood until we generate this mind that aspires to enlightenment, until we become bodhisattvas. So it's so important for us to learn exactly how that occurs and to find out that that will never occur if we don't have the foundation of the teaching shared in common with beings of small capacity and the teaching shared in common with beings of medium capacity. Because if we haven't even in that same text, Bodhisattva Shantideva's Bodhichara Avatara, the Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life, if we haven't even dreamt of our own suffering, how could we ever imagine trying to help others with their suffering? So this is why we have to study so thoroughly those teachings shared in common with beings of small and medium capacity. Understand the Four Noble Truths so thoroughly. Understand the foundational teachings about the truth of suffering, the origin, the cessation and path so thoroughly. And understand what the three highest higher trainings are so thoroughly, so that we understand what our plight is and we understand how to get out of our plight And that desire to get out of our plate, which is called renunciation, is turned towards other sentient beings. And when it's turned towards others and wishing to get them out of their plate, it's called compassion. And when it serves as a foundation for altruism that then springs into bodhicitta, it's called great compassion. It's something that is exclusive in the great vehicle and the Mahayana vehicle. Immeasurable compassion is found in other vehicles, in the hearer and solitary realizer vehicle, but the great compassion is not found. It is only found in the great vehicle, because it is that great compassion that gives rise to, has to give rise to altruism, which has to give rise to bodhicitta, which, if it has been done and meditated upon correctly. And again, week after week, we're looking at the stages of one of the types of practice that would lead us to the result of bodhicitta, that would make our minds day and night seek Buddhahood for the sake of every single sentient being in the universe, without having any bias whatsoever, with not having any hesitation whatsoever, viewing every single sentient being as a mother would her only child, and saying, "You're in trouble and I must free you," without any hesitation. Even those people who you would now consider difficult, who you think should be punished, a Buddha would never think like this, because bias was thrown out before he or she even became a bodhisattva, because it's a prerequisite generating equanimity towards all beings. So now that we know how supreme this ideal is of bodhicitta, and how now we know that it's the only entrance into the Mahayana, and we know that we're attending a teaching on the great vehicle, we're attending a teaching that we're trying to learn in order to achieve our highest potential. Why wouldn't we want to achieve our highest potential if we can? You know, if that's an option, if there's an option to make our minds achieve, relinquish all of its bad qualities and achieve all of the most excellent qualities. If that's possible, why wouldn't we aim for that? And the only way we can have that result, which is possible, once you study enough, you'll know this is possible. Once you meditate enough, this is not like a story or a fairy tale. You'll know that this is something that's possible once you meditate enough. This will become concrete in your mind that, yes, it's possible to become a Buddha. And since that's possible, since my mind is in the nature of clear light and unsullied, but the stains that are currently there are adventitious, meaning they're just extra to it. They aren't its nature. We find this in Acharya Dharmakirti's Pramanavartika Karika, where we find this kind of definition of our mind, so that we know that the messed up parts of our mind, the stains, the contaminations, the attachment, the hatred, the pride, the jealousy, all of this ego, all of these things are add-ons to the nature of our mind. Our nature of our mind is extremely pure. And when we remove the stains that keep us from knowing its purity, we can experience our mind's purity. We have what is called Buddha nature. We have the potential to become a Buddha because we have a mind that doesn't have a nature that's sullied. We have a mind that's in the nature of unsullied, but it's currently sullied. But those stains are what is called adventitious again. Adventitious means they're added on. It means they could be distilled out because the nature of the mind aren't them. Everything is dependent arising. And when we learn that things dependently arise, and we learn that results depend upon causes, and we learn that results are concordant with their causes, then we find out that since a state of mind is a result, there's necessarily a way to cause it. And since our mind is only as encumbered, because our mind is only as encumbered as the stains that are encumbering it, as soon as those stains are removed, we're able to unencumber it. We're able to unbind it. The self-grasping ignorance and the self-cherishing attitude currently bind us, bind our mind in such a way that disallows us to experience our highest amount of happiness, complete freedom from suffering, and the most reliability that's accomplishable. If we could know what was needed for all sentient beings because of valid cognition, we would be the most reliable guides in the universe. And that's what a Buddha has become. And that's what we can become if we rely upon the exact stages that the Buddha came to show us that he and she, some she, relied upon in order to achieve that state that if we're all completely honest with ourselves, we would love. Because day and night, all we try to do is get out of suffering, try to frame our lives in a way where there's the least amount of suffering possible, and we suck at it because we keep having suffering, and try to frame our lives in the best way possible so that we always have happiness, but we suck at that because we don't seem to have happiness that lasts, and we're always dissatisfied. And the beings that I've met that have convinced me that this makes sense because of logic and reasoning seem very different. They seem focused on something that's much greater than just me. And for some reason, and we'll learn exactly what that reason is. And if you've been sticking around enough, if you've been listening well enough, you'll know what that reason is. Their happiness when they're doing nothing whatsoever, or when they're experiencing incredible amounts of what we would think is suffering, is clearly boundless when you look at their face and you see their affect, even in the face of the most extreme difficulties. And I can say this from firsthand experience, not because I read it, not because I heard about it, because I've been fortunate over the last 30 years to be surrounded by some of the greatest lamas in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition. And I'm so fortunate for that. I am so fortunate. And everyone listening to this teaching is so fortunate because you're meeting like I did with the Mahayana, meeting with the great vehicle, meeting with the teachings of Arya Nagarjuna, and meeting with the teachings of Arya Asanga, Lord Maitreya, those teachings that Lord Buddha Shakyamuni was so kind 2,600 years ago to transmit to us, to teach us. And these lamas, these teachers, and the Indian Pandits in the Nalanda and Vikramalashila tradition, and that all of these kind masters in the Theravadan tradition, the Dharmagupta tradition, and of course the Mulasarvastivada tradition that we get our lineage, the Sanskrit tradition from. These kind teachers kept this lineage intact and passed it down so that it lands in our laps, and it doesn't just get to us in a very difficult way to understand because of the kindness of these commentators, these Indian commentators, and the extensive deeds, profound view lineage, the lineage of blessings, and so forth, and the Tibetan commentaries that are also part of the lineage of blessings. We're so fortunate that all of these beings kept these teachings intact and put beautiful ornaments on them to make them more clear so that we can understand them more and more and more clearly, so that a being like me who's not sharp capacity is able to get to some of the sutras by way of these commentaries and be able to differentiate between what sutra is a definitive teaching and what sutra is a figurative teaching. And that is the name of the game when you have a teacher named Buddha Shakyamuni who taught to scope and said a lot of different stuff. Only an omniscient being knows that, hey, I can't say the same thing to every single person. I can't teach selflessness to every single person in the same way. So I'm going to tell this group of people that, yes, okay, there is an autonomous self. There's a self that's just not permanent, unitary, or independent. And I'm going to tell this group of people that no, there's no, autonomous, substantially real self of person. And then I'll tell this group of people, all those things are true, but there's actually no externality. Everything's just the nature of your mind. And then I'll tell some people that, yes, things don't truly exist at any level, but intrinsically they do exist at a conventional level, just not at an ultimate level. And then the Buddha, at the second turning of the wheel of Dharma, where he taught the definitive teaching, said, nothing in the universe has intrinsic existence because it dependently originates. It dependently originates in 3 levels: results depending on causes, wholes depending on parts, and dependence on, and this is the thing you really have to understand, because this is the name of the game, dependence upon mere imputation, independence upon a collection, some sort of collection of stuff, causes and conditions, wholes and parts, that serve as a basis of designation. And the designated object that you're merely imputing is mutually exclusive with the basis of designation. The Buddha didn't tell everyone that story, because that story takes a long time to tell. It's taken me 30 years to get to like, oh, the understanding of the beginning of the story about mere imputation. But it's real medicine. And it's the only medicine that will cure the self-grasping ignorance. None of the other medicines that I just mentioned, the selflessness of permanent unitary independent self, the selflessness of person that's autonomously substantially real, the selflessness of externality, the selflessness of true existence, but not negating intrinsic existence. None of those things will get you out of cyclic existence. But all of those things will get you to the correct view of emptiness. Because if you don't realize that this self is impermanent, if you don't understand that little kind of detail, if you can't figure that part out, getting to mere imputation is just out of bounds of reality. It's not real. It won't happen because the foundation of the house isn't built. As I said in the beginning, understand there are persons of 3 capacities: small, medium, and supreme. Supreme isn't because, oh, you just got lucky. It means that you're willing to endure hardships. You're willing to take the long road to get to the best destination. You're not going to take a shortcut to an individual liberation and abiding nirvana. That supreme vehicle is supreme because the way of thinking that has to be created is extremely vast. It's vast in terms of the way that you think about every single sentient being in the universe, and it's also vast in its compassionate aspect, and it's also vast with respect to the amount of reasoning that one uses to deduce that things don't intrinsically exist. Even though you must realize things don't intrinsically exist in the individual liberation vehicle to achieve an abiding nirvana, the amount of sophistication and reasoning and examples that are used for the bodhisattva to realize emptiness are much, much more vast because they have to help all sentient beings. And not everybody is cued off. Some people are cued off by the 7-point analysis of the chariot. Some people are cued off by the negation of the 4 intrinsic modes of production. Some people are cued off by looking at the 4 essentials. So the bodhisattva has to learn all of these sophisticated ways of understanding emptiness so that he or she can not only understand it themselves in the fullest way, but again, so does the here and the solitary realizer, but also have a sophistication around the way to help other sentient beings with that view. And the Buddha came to realize that view of emptiness for one reason, and that was to figure out how to be beneficial to others. This all links together. And when we study enough, and when we look at enough texts, it becomes just blissful to keep going with it because it makes sense. And nothing, up until you start to make sense out of this, makes sense in samsara. Cyclic existence just keeps not making sense and not making sense. And many of us show up at the door of a Buddhist center, or show up at a YouTube video, or show up on TikTok, or show up on Facebook looking for a solution to the problem. What's the problem? I can't figure out why the heck everything keeps going wrong. And then when I think it's going to go wrong, it seems to go right. And that right isn't even right. And then that right ends. That right had an atomic bomb built inside of it already. And it was just bait making me think it wasn't going to end. That suffering of change. Oh, As my teacher would say, amo. Cyclic existence is really disgusting when we learn what it is. We learn about the various sufferings, the suffering of birth, aging, sickness, and death, the suffering of separating from pleasant things. Think about them as I list it. The suffering of meeting with unpleasant things, the suffering of not getting what you want, the suffering of being forced into this body and mind over and over again that sets us up for the things I just mentioned. The suffering of the uncertainty of what will happen when we die, the suffering of taking rebirth again, the suffering of shucking off bodies, the suffering of going the higher realms, the lower realms, the suffering of not being satisfied, the suffering of not having a companion when we've died and are thrust out of our body, we're all alone. Yeah. Suffering is suffering, suffering of change, pervasive, compounded suffering. Suffering is real when we look at it and apply it to our lives and think about it. And we're saying, hey, I've had enough. And I care about others. And I want to figure out a way for them to say, yes, I've had enough. And I want to figure out a way to show them how to be done. May I become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. May I achieve unsurpassable, true, complete enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings. This is the point that these teachings, week after week, are trying to make. This is the evolution of our mind that we're trying to have happen. We're trying so hard to make this happen. And hopefully every day you're meditating on these steps that we've painstakingly gone over with a magnifying glass. We have taken no shortcuts. We've looked at like 10, maybe more commentaries just on these 7 points, with the 8, if you count the precept of equanimity. We've taken no shortcuts. You owe it to yourself. You owe it to all sentient beings, because there is a solution. There wasn't a solution, blah, 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 but there is a solution. And the solution came from these holy, holy beings who want nothing from us except for us to practice so that we can have the happiness they have and be free from suffering just like them. So with the motivation to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings, imagine those beings in the space in front of you who've achieved the result that you would like to achieve, who have transformed into reliable guides, motivated by altruism to benefit sentient beings. As Acharya Dignaga says in the beginning of the Pramana Samuccaya, imagine all of the holy beings, the extensive deeds lineage, the profound view lineage of blessings. Imagining Buddha Shakyamuni, His Holiness, the 14th Dalai Lama, who's in our world right now, Chen Rezig in person, Kala Chakra in person. We're so fortunate to have this enlightened being here with us. Beings like my root teachers, some of your root teachers, the holy Namgyal Khensur Geshe Wangdak Rinpoche. We're so fortunate to have received teachings from him. Geshe Lobsang Gonpo Rinpoche, Demalocha Rinpoche, Namgyal Khensur Demalocha Rinpoche. He was the abbot before Rinpoche was the abbot. And I had the great fortune of receiving the transmission of the 5 great texts from him. We are so incredibly fortunate to come from this bloodline of spirituality. These masters who were giants of philosophy, giants of compassion, giants of wisdom of emptiness. They're our spiritual family that goes all the way through those Nalanda Pandits, all the way up to Buddha Shakyamuni. Unbroken, unerring, not messed up. Imagining these beings in the space in front of you. Whoever you consider a holy enlightened being, whoever you connect with in that way, someone you think has transformed in that way of completeness, has done this complete transformation. We're looking for complete transformation. We're not looking for partial transformation. We're not looking for suppression of our negative states of mind. We're looking for like demolishing our negative states of mind. Suppression means they'll come back again. Demolishing means they won't come back again. Once there's no cause, there's no result. Removing the cause completely is what we're looking to do. We're not looking to suppress the cause until a later time. And if we don't combine calm abiding and special insight, if we don't combine like calming meditation and combine these kind of meditations on the mindfulnesses, the four mindfulnesses, with the wisdom realizing emptiness and bodhicitta, we will not become a Buddha. You can make your mind as calm as you want, come out of meditation, you'll still be kind of calm, but just the wrong thing will come into your purview, and that attachment, that hatred, that meditation that you blissed out on will not be the antidote at that moment. And that destructive emotion will take you over like it has every time in the past until you get rid of its root. And that's the self-grasping ignorance that gives rise to the attachment. And calm abiding meditation alone, single-pointed meditation alone. I don't care if you can sit for 4 days straight in single-pointed concentration. It will not cut the root of cyclic existence. And you will remain in cyclic existence, just like Buddha Shakyamuni's last two teachers, Acharya Alara Kalam and Acharya Udreka, who realized the highest peak of existence of the formless realm meditation, yet did not get rid of self-grasping ignorance, so were still stuck in samsara thinking they were in nirvana. And we have many teachers these days pushing these traditions of just meditation and just calming down and these kind of secular ideas about mindfulness. And they're great if you're just looking to calm down a bit and be a little bit of anger management. But if you're looking for anger demolishing, if you're looking for anger uprooting, if you're looking for a separation forever from anger, those things will not work. It's a lie to say they will, because there's one thing that makes anger, and that's ignorance. Ignorance perceives things to have intrinsic existence that they do not. Ignorance perceives a mode of existence that doesn't exist. And if you don't understand what the mode of existence that you think exists doesn't, if you don't understand the mode of existence that actually exists, and you don't understand the mode of existence that you think exists that doesn't, you'll never, ever be able to get rid of what the misapprehension of the mode of existence creates. And that is attachment, hatred, and more other kinds of dumb. Pride, jealousy, miserliness. There's a whole host of them. We can look at 6 root afflictions, 20 secondary afflictions. We can just start listing them. We're professionals at these things. We are. But we don't need to be anymore because we have the antidote to these things. But the antidote is not like, if we look at the, the antidote to darkness, it's turning on a light. It's not pouring water in the room. It's not having a cool glass of water. If you're thirsty, you'll quench your thirst, but the light's not, the darkness won't go away. You might feel better about sitting in the dark with a cool glass of water if it's hot in the room, or a warm glass of cocoa if it's cold in the room, but it's not going to get to your goal, and that's turning, illuminating the room. You got to turn on a light. Likewise, without the light of wisdom, the darkness of ignorance will never, ever be eradicated. No matter how many cool glasses of water you drink, no matter how many cups of chai you have, or nice glasses of cocoa you have, or massages you have, no chance. You must have the light of wisdom to get rid of the darkness of ignorance. So imagine those beings who have the light of wisdom, that have gotten rid of the darkness of ignorance, that have the light that's shining of bodhicitta, this other cherishing attitude. Just imagine these beings in the space in front of us. And now at the beginning of this class, we said, may I become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. We said that we want to be in this kind of class of beings. We want to be in this kind of grouping of beings that are called supreme beings. And that, we want to, not because, out of an egoistic, it starts that way, believe me, but like we want to land on it in a way that we want to be able to be the utmost help to every single person in the universe. And the only way that we can do that is to become a Buddha. And we don't want to get into any more because we'll get into the reading tonight where we're actually on the extraordinary attitude, where we're actually reading about, altruism that forces you to become a bodhisattva. So I don't want to, we read a little last week, so we'll just leave it at that. But imagine, since you said I'll become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings, and since bodhisattvas start going out looking for all the sentient beings they can possibly find to teach, what they can to help them, Let's start pretending that we can do that now, because nothing becomes more difficult with practice, as Bodhisattva Shantideva says in the Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life, the theme of this evening. Nothing becomes more difficult with practice. So let's practice what we'll eventually actually do when it's game time, when we're a bodhisattva out there just trying to help every single being, ants and worms and birds and hell beings and hungry ghosts and formless realm beings, when we're out there trying to locate all of them, and we're getting better and better at doing it as we go along the bodhisattva path. You know, that's what will happen when we become bodhisattvas. We'll get better at finding sentient beings. We'll get better and better at helping sentient beings. We'll know what to say, when to say it, who to say it to, how to say it, etc. And then we'll become the most reliable guide in the universe because of that path when we become a Buddha. So you see how the setup is for this kind of long run. We're setting ourselves up now for something that happens in the long run. But if you don't start, you can never land somewhere. If you don't start going, you won't get there. I mean, it just makes perfect sense. You know, we don't have to look at the analysis of coming and going based on what Arya Nagarjuna says. We just have to look at like common sense. You know, if I don't start, I can't get there. If I don't start going, I won't, get to the place that I'm going to. If I don't start working on making my mind have a mental basis that's in line with, the mind that aspires to enlightenment, or that's a basis or like a foundation for, we see there's mental basis in Panchen Sonandrapa's general meaning of perfection. It's very clear. We need this real specific mental bases of understanding the excellent qualities of all of the Buddhas. Obviously, you'd need to know how great a Buddha was to want to become a Buddha. And you'd have to be willing to endure what a bodhisattva is going to go through if you want to become a bodhisattva. So there's real specific mental bases that are required. We can look at Panchen Sonandrapa's text another time. So we're trying to make our minds fertile grounds for growing this thing called bodhicitta. So the way we're going to do this is to practice by, imagining that we can bring all sentient beings to this teaching. We can lead them in this practice. As Lorinda said earlier, when we were giving a teaching on English and in Buddhism to a Tibetan family, and when you bring all of these sentient beings here and they're reciting these prayers with you, you're imagining you're leading them in the practice. You're imagining you're bringing all sentient beings here. This is so lovely. Lori just out of nowhere brought this up. She had heard it on a teaching on the audio files at uma-tibet.org. You'll find a bunch of audio files of, again, Jeffrey Hopkins translating for some of the giants of meditation and philosophy in the Tibetan tradition, in the Nyingma and in the Gelugpa tradition. So if you visit uma-tibet.org, you'll find under audio files a plethora of translated teachings. They're old teachings. Be patient. There's hissing. They were recorded on cassette tapes, but they've been preserved and they're digitized on that website. And Lori found this beautiful teaching that says, not only do you imagine you're leading them in this practice, and when you're doing mantras, you're imagining they're doing mantras, and when you're making prostrations, you're imagining they're making prostrations with you and you're leading them, but also rejoice in the fact that you're doing it, rejoice in the fact that they're doing it. Lama Tsongkhapa says very clearly in his kind of bio type text that, hey, little secret, the easiest way in the world to gather vast amounts of merit is to rejoice in the virtue of your deeds and others' deeds, because you just have to sit back and rejoice. So if you can add this layer onto your meditation as you invite sentient beings and rejoice in the fact that you're doing this, rejoice in the fact that they're doing it, it will multiply your virtue. Try and imagine the Buddha field in front of you. Imagine there's like a field of Buddhas on every atom in the space in front of you. Imagine that when you bring sentient beings here, for instance, when you're imagining you're making prostrations, imagine that they're making prostrations. And then you could also then compound your bodies and imagine that there's billions of your own body making prostrations to the billions of the Buddhas in the space in front of you. And that your billions of tongues saying, I pay homage to the Buddhas. Imagine there's billions of tongues saying this, billions of bodies that are bowing down, billions of minds that are paying homage. Make your meditation count. We have such a short time in this precious human life. And Jetsun Milarepa figured out how to become a Buddha with the body that we have. Yeah, in one life. I mean, that's like a high out there story, but it's true. Others as well. We have other examples as well that we say, oh, like Master Dron Tompa, we say, and Jay Gonpo, we say so many of these beings, lineage holders, achieved the Buddhahood in their lifetime. We see Lama Tsongkhapa achieving Buddhahood in the Bardo or achieving Buddhahood prior to that. We see with the life as Lama Tsongkhapa into the Bardo with an illusory body. Yeah, we're really, really lucky that we have a human basis, that from this basis, we can achieve our highest ideal. And the way we achieve the highest ideal is with the highest intention. The highest goal, the way we achieve the highest goal is with the highest ideal. And that's with a mind that says, may I become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. It's a mind that wiped out the self-cherishing attitude and became convinced that cherishing others was the key to success and happiness. Imagine that you bring friends, imagine that you bring neutral beings, and imagine that you bring difficult beings here tonight with you. Hell, hungry ghost, animals, humans, demigods, and gods. Imagine that everyone is here. Rejoice in the fact that everyone is here and that you've brought them here, that you're engaging in something that the Buddhas have always, always been waiting for you to engage in. Imagine that the Buddhas in the space in front of you are overjoyed and looking into your eyes with immense kindness and unconditional love, just like a mother looks at her only child. And now we imagine that the space in front of us transforms into Rajagriha Vulture Peak Mountain, where the Buddha taught about that thing that we talked about a moment ago, the lack of intrinsic existence of all phenomena, the fact that all phenomena have two truths, conventional and ultimate truth. In terms of natures, we say all phenomena have two natures. And we find out that nothing in the universe, no conventional thing in the universe has intrinsic existence. We come to find out that everything that exists is empty of intrinsic existence at both the conventional level and the ultimate level. Nothing exists ultimately. Not even emptiness exists ultimately. Emptiness is empty of intrinsic existence. Conventional truth of emptiness is emptiness, because the ultimate truth of emptiness is emptiness of intrinsic existence, of emptiness. Wow. And we have to directly perceive this if we want to uproot the problems in our mind. And we have to conceptually realize this before we can directly perceive this with a yogic direct perceiver. This thing I'm talking about the lack of intrinsic existence of all phenomena, this mode of existence that we're wrong about. We think that things have intrinsic existence, but they lack intrinsic existence. So the thing that we walk around thinking about everything is wrong. A part of something we think about everything is wrong. Things exist, they just don't exist the way that we think that they do. And the way that we think that they do makes us crazy, makes us have attachment, makes us have aversion, makes us have other sorts of ignorance. And having a directly opposing thing to that misunderstanding is called wisdom. Wisdom is in direct opposition of ignorance. And it has to be in order to get rid of ignorance. It has to be a discerning mind that tallies with reality. The reality is that things don't intrinsically exist. The reality that things don't intrinsically exist combats the misapprehension that things do intrinsically exist. And what intrinsic existence means is that thing is self-powered. That thing sets itself up. I set myself up from my own side. You set yourself up from your own side. That chair sets itself up from its own side and doesn't set itself up under the power of mere imputation of a designating consciousness. But I can make it just, all I have to say is kucha. And then you say, well, that's not the thing that's sitting over there that I sit down in. And then I tell you kucha means chair in Tibetan. And then you giggle a little. Oh, they mean chair. You see? And that's like real opener level of what's wrong. But just think about that. Think about hearing the name for something that isn't the name you're used to, and then thinking, oh, they mean this because it intrinsically exists as this. I'm not merely imputing it as this. It's not just a label that I'm imputing independence upon a basis of designation. No, there's a chair over there, and you're just calling it kucha. There's a dog over there, and you're calling it ki. Tibetan, the word for dog is ki. Yeah, you mean dog. Yeah, there's an intrinsically existent thing over there that's dog. But really, according to what you arrive at after the ultimate analysis is done and you have a non-finding of that intrinsic existence, when you come back to out of the ultimate analysis that only has, arrives at a non-finding of something that never existed in the first place, so you don't find it, you have to then harmonize what's going on. You have to come to the conclusion that there's some mode of existence that does actually operate and does function, and that when I turn a light on, darkness goes out, and that when I start walking in a certain direction, I end up in another place, and when I speak softly, folks can't hear me in the other room, but if I shout, they'll say, what are you shouting about in there? So there's something that's working and functioning. And I have to harmonize that with what I just found under ultimate analysis. What this Heart Sutra says, things don't have intrinsic existence. That's what you find out with ultimate analysis. But ultimate analysis has no business telling you in terms of like how then, well, then what, how's it working then? Your conventional analysis will have to come to a conclusion that when kind of turning and looking back at what ultimate analysis found, that things are mere imputation, independence upon a collection that serves as a basis of designation. That statement sounds like very just like nothing, right? But that statement will get you out of samsara. That understanding will get you out of samsara. That understanding will serve as the reason, the concrete reason, the not intrinsically existent reason, but the solid reason to prove to you that things don't intrinsically exist. Because if they intrinsically exist, they can't be merely imputed in dependence upon a collection that serves as its basis of designation. They have to exist from their own side, separate from a designating consciousness. We got to see if they do. And the Buddha said, we're not imagining things. We're just imagining a mode of existence that's wrong. And we have to separate imagination from imagining a mode of existence that's wrong. Because if it were imagination, I could give you $20 tomorrow, and then the following day just go, oh, I imagine that's back in my pocket, and it would show up. That's not true. But the way that I think I'm operating when I engage in the action of handing you $20 or whatever I said, the action, the agent, and the object are all empty of intrinsic existence, but still function just right. And when I give you that $20, you can go pay somebody for something else, and tomorrow I'll be broke, and you will be too if you pay for something with that $20 I gave you. Unless you have extra money, of course. The Sutra of the Heart of Transcendent Knowledge. Thus have I heard once, the Blessed One was dwelling in Rajagriha at Vulture Peak Mountain, together with a great gathering of the Sangha of monks and a great gathering of the Sangha of Bodhisattvas. At that time, the Blessed One entered the samadhi that expresses the Dharma called profound illumination. At the same time, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, while practicing the profound Prajaparamita, saw in this way, saw the five skandhas to be empty of nature. Then, through the power of the Buddha, Venerable Shariputra said to noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, how should a son or daughter of noble family train who wishes to practice the profound Prajaparamita? Addressed in this way, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, said to Venerable Shariputra, O Shariputra, a son or daughter of noble family who wishes to practice the profound Prajaparamita should see in this way, seeing the five skandhas to be empty of nature. Form is emptiness. Emptiness also is form. Emptiness is no other than form. Form is no other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, perception, formation, and consciousness are emptiness. Thus, Shariputra, All dharmas are emptiness. There are no characteristics. There is no birth and no cessation. There is no impurity and no purity. There is no decrease and no increase. Therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness, there is no form, no feeling, no perception, no formation, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no appearance, no sound, no smell, no taste. No touch, no dharmas, no eye, dhatu, up to no mind, dhatu, no dhatu of dharmas, no mind, consciousness, dhatu, no ignorance, no end of ignorance, up to no old age and death, no end of old age and death, no suffering, no origin of suffering, no cessation of suffering, no path, no wisdom, no attainment, and no non-attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, since the Bodhisattvas have no attainment, they abide by means of Prajaparamita. Since there is no obscuration of mind, there is no fear. They transcend falsity and attain complete nirvana. All the Buddhas of the three times by means of Prajaparamita fully awaken to unsurpassable, true, complete enlightenment. Therefore, the great mantra Prajaparamita, the mantra of great insight, the unsurpassed mantra, the unequal mantra, the mantra that calms all suffering, should be known as truth. Since there is no deception, the Prajaparamita mantra is said in this way. Te ata on gate gate paragate parasangate buddhi soha. Thus, Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, should train in the profound Prajaparamita. Then the Blessed One arose from that samadhi and praised noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, saying, Good, good, O son of noble family. Thus it is, O son of noble family. Thus it is. One should practice the profound Prajaparamita just as you have taught, and all the Tathagatas will rejoice. When the Blessed One had said this, Venerable Shariputra and noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, that whole assembly in the world with the gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas, rejoiced and praised the words of the Blessed One. And it says that, all the Buddhas of the three times by means of Prajaparamita achieved their goals. So without the wisdom realizing emptiness, you cannot achieve the goal of Buddhahood. There's never been a Buddha before that did. There's never been a Buddha now that did. And there'll never be a Buddha that achieves Buddhahood without the perfection of wisdom. And so we just have to look at these sutras and understand, like, these are giving us real specific pointing at instructions. It's pointing at what we need to get rid of our mind, the grasping and intrinsic existence, in order to achieve Buddhahood, because all the Buddhas of the three times did so by the method of the perfection of wisdom. Kala jibene jodamba ne nishe du jungai du jendru baba lama yibu jinzi nizungando so la shatselo aga samara tajandara samara yabe aga samara tajandara. Agha samara dashadara samara ya bede yada onga de gade bara gade bara zanga de bodhizo baba ganje zanji gaye dembe jiri she lobo doji mebo doji shewa doji dagi baje medube shetanji jedin goye zo gerin don jaje ju she wadan meton nube jendan de wadan don ba don jin bon zon zon joji dashi de jan den da de le jo. And I apologize to those who are on TikTok asking to invite to join. I can't do that because I'm on multiple applications and I'm live on Zoom right now. But I appreciate you wanting to join. And if you have any questions, feel free to DM me. We'll make a mandala offering as a request for teaching. I know it's later, but I felt like the things that I said were really important. So I never want to stop talking if I feel something coming that may be beneficial or that might clarify my own mind. That's really what this is about, because I don't have clairvoyance and I'm not arrogant enough to think that, boy, am I helping you all, because I don't know exactly what you need. But if you're like me, as Master Shantideva says in the beginning of the Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life, then this will help you out because it helps me out. The fundamental ground is scented with incense, is strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun, and the moon. I imagine this is a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. Holy Lamas high, wrap the sky of your Dharma bodies in massive clouds of knowledge and love, and let them pour upon the earth of your disciples as we are ready, a shower of rain, the teachings deep and wide. And we'll put inside our mandala offering the source of all my good, the foundation of all good qualities by Lama Tsongkhapa, the text that we've been studying for 100,000 years now, for 30 years. And we've been doing it now for a few since Rinpoche passed away. We'll include this in our mandala, because if we look at the 6 preparations, when we get to the 6th preparation, we make a mandala offering. We've taught this before. Anybody has questions, they can ask me later. The 6 preparations, they're in the beginning of the Lamrim. Very, very important. In the 6th preparation, there's a mandala offering, and then it says, make further supplications. And we could actually insert this source of all my good in it in terms of further supplications, because it says, grant me, bless me. There's a lot of supplications. This is a poem of supplication. So we can put it inside of our mandala offering as a supplication, and then, excuse me, utilize it in that manner. Okay, ready? The source of all my good is my kind Lama, my Lord. Bless me first to see that taking myself to him or her in the proper way is the very root of the path, and grant me then to serve and follow him with all my strength and reverence. Bless me first to realize that the excellent life of leisure I found just this once is ever so hard to find and ever so valuable. Grant me then to wish and never stop to wish that I could take its essence night and day. My body and the life in it are fleeting as the bubbles in the sea froth of a wave. Bless me first thus to recall the death that will destroy me soon, and help me find sure knowledge that after I have died, the things I've done, the white or black, and what those deeds will bring to me, follow always close behind, as certain as my shadow. Grant me then ever to be careful to stop the slightest wrong of the many wrongs we do, and try to carry out instead each and every good of the many that we may. Bless me to receive all that's wrong with the seemingly good things of this life. I can never get enough of them. They cannot be trusted. They are the door to every pain I have. Grant me then to strive instead for the happiness of liberation. Grant that these pure thoughts may lead me to be watchful and to recall what I should be doing. Grant me to give the greatest care to make the vows of morality, to make the pradamoksha vows the essence of my practice, because they are the root of Buddha's teachings. I have slipped and fallen into the sea of this suffering life. Bless me to see that every living being, everyone my own mother, has fallen into. Grant me then to practice the wish for enlightenment, to take on myself the task of freeing them all. Bless me to see clearly that the wish itself is not enough. For if I am not well trained in the 3 moralities, I cannot become a Buddha. Grant me then a fierce resolve to master the Bodhisattva vows. Grant that I may quickly gain the path where quietude and insight join together, one which quiets my mind from being distracted to wrong objects, the other which analyzes the perfect meaning in the correct way. Grant that once I practice well, the path shared, and become a vessel that is worthy, I enter with perfect ease the way of the diamond, highest of all ways, holiest door to come inside for the fortunate and good. Bless me to know with genuine certainty that when I've entered thus, the cause that gives me both the high attainments is to keep my pledges and my vows most pure. Grant me then always to keep them, even if it costs my life. Bless me next to realize as well as I can the crucial points of both the steps, the essence of the secret ways. Bless me to practice as the holy ones have spoken, putting all my effort in and never leaving off the practice of the 4 times, highest that there is. Bless me, grant me that the spiritual friend who shows me this good road, all my true companions in this quest, live long and fruitful lives. Bless and grant me that the rain of obstacles and things within me or outside me that could stop me now, stop and end forever. In all my lives, may I never live apart from my perfect lamas. May I bask in the glory of the Dharma. May I fulfill perfectly every good quality of every level and path, and reach then quickly the place where I become myself, the one who holds the diamond. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. Sanje Jadan Zaji Janan La, Janjo Badu Dani Jazuji, Dagi Chishe Jibe Sananji, Dola Benja Zanje Dubasho, Sanje Jadan Zaji Janan La, Janjo Badu Dani Jazuji, Dagi Chishe Jibe Sananji, Dola Benja Zanje Dubasho, Sanje Jadan Zaji Janan La, Janjo Badu Dani Jazuji, Dagi Chishe Jibe Sananji, Dola Benja Zanje Dubasho. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the merit I create by teaching the Dharma, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. May I become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. That's the special refuge prayer in Bodhicitta. This was Atisha, Lord Atisha's refuge prayer. We opened with Lord Atisha's quote from The Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment that summarizes all of Lord Buddha's teachings. Understand that there are persons of 3 capacities, small, medium, supreme. I shall write clearly to identify their individual characteristics. That one quote encompasses everything that the Buddha ever taught. We're so fortunate to have things to unravel what that means. And if you are attached, as Sachen Konga Nipo says in Parting from the 4 Attachments, if you are attached to this life, you are not a spiritual practitioner. If you are attached to samsara, you have no renunciation. If you are attached to your own self-interest, you have no bodhicitta. And if there is grasping, you don't have the view. If there's any mode of grasping at intrinsic existence, you don't have the view. And if you don't have the view that's held in the second turning of the wheel of Dharma, the Madhyamaka Prasangika view, you can't get out of cyclic existence, let alone become a Buddha. May we always be connected to the Madhyamaka Prasangika view, the middle way consequence of view, school view, the view held by Arya Nagarjuna and Acharya Chandrakirti and Acharya Arya Deva, Acharya Buddhapalita, Bodhisattva Shantideva. May we always in all of our lives be connected to lamas who hold this view and can take us to that final view so that we don't have grasping, so that we can get out of cyclic existence. If it's not the middle, it's one of the extremes. It's actually both the extremes if it's not the middle. Nihilism and substantialism, when we really, really investigate things. And the middle is only found through the middle way consequence school view. And if you study the tenets and you really, really look at them well, you'll become convinced of this too. So we've been looking at, well, how do I become a bodhisattva? You say I need to be a bodhisattva to become a Buddha. And the only way to enter into the Mahayana path where you become a bodhisattva is to get bodhicitta. And we've been studying the 7-point cause and effect for realizing the mind that aspires to enlightenment, passed down from Buddha Shakyamuni to Lord Maitreya, down to Arya Sangha through the extensive deeds lineage, and it gets to us through our Khan Lamas. We've been studying this. We've been studying it well. And we've been looking at the first pre-step that's not even included in the 7-point cause and effect called equanimity. And then we looked at the actual causal steps within the 7-point cause and effect. And we're actually at the last causal step in this process at this point, which is called altruism, the extraordinary attitude. So the causal steps within the 7-point cause and effect for realizing the mind that aspires to enlightenment are, if you will, the step not included of equanimity as a prerequisite. It's a pre-step. And then in the 7-point cause and effect, 6 actual steps, recognizing sentient beings as our mother. We've become clear on that, hopefully. Remembering their kindness, wishing to repay their kindness, love through the force of attraction, love through the force of this affection we have for beings, great compassion, and now we've landed on altruism, the extraordinary attitude. And to be really, we looked at the text last week, and we were looking at His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama's commentary on the 3rd Dalai Lama, the Gyewa Sonan Gyatso's Lam Rim, the essence of refined gold, I think it's called, Lam Rim. So we were looking at that last week, and it kind of combines the 6th and the 7th step. So it's really important to keep the 6th and the 7th step clean, because in the Lam Rim Chemo, it's not as combined. It does become combined because it's like an instantaneous thing that happens from the 6th to the 7th. But I want to show how we differentiate it. And the 3rd Dalai Lama also puts it together because it makes sense completely logically that we've concluded that we want to be the cause for beings to have happiness when we decided we love them. And we've concluded we want to be the cause for them to be free from suffering when we decided we have compassion for them. And now this conclusion is built to the point where we're like, I'm going to do it. And then it's like 3 seconds later, you realize, well, what do I have to do it? Well, I can't do that. Then you say, I have to become a Buddha. So it makes a lot of sense to put the steps together. But if we can feel each step separately, they can have and learn it that way, and then eventually kind of do it fast, like a combination, then it'll really have a lot of feeling. And if we look at it in the, again, going back to, oh, did I grab the wrong book? I might have. No, I didn't. So if we look at it in terms of Lama Tsongkhapa's medium treatise on the stages of the enlightenment, path to enlightenment, the Lam Rim Din, the medium, there's a great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment, the medium stage in the path to enlightenment, and the abbreviated stage of the path to enlightenment, and then the source of all my good. And they get smaller and smaller as you go from great, middle, abbreviated to the smallest, kind of like the source of all my good. But in here, Lama Tsongkhapa talks about the step. We read it in the Lam Rim Chemo, and this is more of a practice text. It's written after the Lamrim Chemo. And I find that you find some real nuggets in here. So after meditating, so we've meditated on love and compassion, and now we've arrived at this spot. After meditating on love and compassion in this manner, finally you will think, alas, if these sentient beings who are pleasant and dear to me are thus deprived of happiness and tormented by suffering, how can I give them happiness and how can I free them from suffering? So now what we've done is we've said, I want to be a cause. In the previous steps, you've said, may I be a cause. I want to be a cause. May I cause them to have happiness. May I cause them to be free from suffering. Now at this point, it's become so strong in your mind that you say, I am going to take that. You're not just saying like a cause, like, oh, to make a sprout, you need water, and you need sunlight. I want to be like one of those things. No, you say like, I'm going to cause it myself. I'm not going to be a cause. I'm going to do this myself. Let me get going on this. What is it that I need to do? I need to bring them to a state of Buddhahood, because this practitioner is doing this because you know about Buddhas. Like, you don't achieve your own full potential, let alone everyone's potential, if you're not a Buddha. So you already know that you're not going to have the highest state of happiness yourself unless you're a Buddha. So you're like, well, what do I got to do? What kind of work do I have to get done? Where are all these folks that I say I want to help? Okay, let me get working on it. Okay. And then I recognize, like, okay, well, how would I possibly do that? I only know like a gazillionth of a percent of all the sentient beings, or where they even are. And I don't even know what to do. I have all these problems myself. How can I give them happiness? How can I free them from suffering? I'm taking it upon myself, this responsibility to liberate them. So this is like now gone way beyond words. This has gone to this part like, I will do this, and under no circumstances won't I? It says, although this was mentioned briefly in the context of repaying kindness, we go back to the third step, where we're saying, I must repay the kindness of these mother sentient beings who took care of me when I was vulnerable. And every being in the universe falls into that category. We said how wonderful it would be if they could just meet with happiness. Oh, I want them to, how wonderful it would be if they could be free from suffering. But this isn't sufficient. It isn't just a looseness here. There isn't, you've now, because you meditated on love and compassion, after that, you have this conviction that's so solid that you say, oh my gosh, I must take it upon myself the task of freeing these mother sentient beings. Because it says it's not sufficient at the point of this wanting to repay their kindness. It's not like the altruism that you generate because you haven't done. It's because you need to generate love and compassion that's capable of inducing a thought, I myself will accomplish this for the benefit of sentient beings. And that the inducing of that thought only comes from this love through the force of attraction and great compassion. Great compassion serves as the springboard that literally you have no choice but to jump into altruism, which then makes it so you have no choice but to say, I must become a Buddha. It says, I myself will accomplish this. It says, as it's taught in the first stages of meditation. This is Acharya Kamalashila's first stages of meditation. It says you should practice it continuously and recollect it during all your activities after sessions and so forth, not just during meditation sessions. So you're walking around with this conviction. I must become a Buddha for the sake of sentient beings. As you walk around the supermarket and you see strangers, you say to yourself, not out loud like a crazy person, you say to yourself, I must become a Buddha for you say to yourself, we're at altruism step. I must take on myself the task I will take on myself the task of freeing you and making you from suffering and taking you to the highest amount of happiness, and you and you and you and you and that butterfly and that worm and that snake and that bird and all those other beings, I can't even figure out where they are right now. We start making our mind saying, I'm going to take upon myself this task. You were so kind to me when I was vulnerable, and now you're maybe acting in a way that's distasteful because you're under the control of disturbing emotions. You're under the control of the menace that I'm under the control of, and I have affection for you, and I care about you, and I must do something about the state that you're in because I must do something about my state. And in order for me to completely do something about my state, I must do something about your state because of the interdependence of everyone. Wow. So we say this, we try to make our lives structure with these teachings. And then it's a real quick conversation in our mind when we say, okay, I'm going to make you a Buddha. Well, I'm like I said that last week, like I'm laying next to you with all my bones broken, and you're laying there with all your bones broken, and I'm saying, I'm going to help you get up. I know the best way to get up. You just first have to do, and then you have to, if you want to get up, you should. This is the state we come to the conclusion of that we're in. We're completely handicapped when it comes to being reliable. We're completely handicapped when it comes to truly helping others. Our self-cherishing attitude won't let us really do it. And the only way we'll get rid of the most subtle form of the self-cherishing attitude is to become a Buddha. Yeah, Bodhisattvas still have self-cherishing, believe it or not. It's only the Buddha that has gotten rid completely at the subtlest level of the self-cherishing attitude. Because the appearance of true existence, the appearance of intrinsic existence, no longer occurs even when they're out of meditation. But for an arhat, in the individual liberation vehicle, when they come out of meditation, everything appears to intrinsically exist. They just know it doesn't. And that barrier keeps them from being able to be the most reliable guide in the universe. That barrier is a subtle selfishness that's left even after the self-grasping attitude is gotten rid of for the hero or solitary realizer of the Shravaka or Prachika Buddha vehicle. It's that subtle selfishness that lingers, that makes it so they're not as happy as they could be. A being in that kind of nirvana isn't as happy as a bodhisattva is when he or she hears, help me. The bodhisattva thinks sure and is overfilled with joy that's more joyful than a being in nirvana, in the lesser vehicle or the individual liberation vehicle. I don't say lesser because anyone's not as good or whatever. It's just less of a motivation. If you're only trying to make yourself liberated versus making sure everyone in the universe is liberated, I'm going to call one small and one big. It's just obvious logic. I'm sorry. It just makes sense. I'm going to call one way of thinking smaller than the other way of thinking. What's, the original word or this, that, and the other thing. I'm looking at what tallies with reality. Because the Buddha would say, hey, if I said something that you can show doesn't make sense, disregard it, throw it out. He said, take my teachings and cut and rub them. Just like when you go to a market and there's fake stuff, I said a lot of things that aren't the final reality because I had to. I'm omniscient. I knew what this person needed, I knew what that person needed, and I knew what that person needed, and they didn't all need the same thing. And everything I taught was a means to getting to the state of Buddhahood. But you have to understand there were figurative, there were things that need to be interpreted, and then there were things that were definitive. So you're walking around and you're saying, I'm going to make sure that I bring you to happiness, the highest happiness and freedom from suffering, which is Buddhahood, and you, 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 and you. And that's when the conclusion comes. I can't do it. Only a Buddha can. Only a Buddha can do this thing that I'm convinced I must do. So then what? I must become a Buddha. Yeah, it's it all ties together so beautifully. And it shows us, it's convincing. It's like hair-raisingly convincing that these steps, if I meditate on them enough, they're so logical that I'll become a bodhisattva. It's not a fairy tale. If I do this work, I'll become a bodhisattva. It's not maybe, because the Buddhas came and showed us these unerring ways to go about becoming Buddhas. Trying to do this in all of our activities. So then what happened? So then Lama Tsongkhapa in the great treatise of the stage of the path to enlightenment brings us to bodhicitta. So we say, I have to become a Buddha. So this is the result. So now we've crossed the line from the 6th step into the 7th step, which is the result of bodhicitta. But it doesn't mean that like, oh, okay, I've concluded this makes sense. I need to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. That's not going to be enough. This has to be sealed now. How do you seal it? Here it goes. Once you have been inspired by the aforementioned process and have seen that you need enlightenment for the sake of others' welfare, you develop the wish to attain it. So now you have a wish to attain it. I wish to become a Buddha. However, this isn't enough. What do you mean? I got the result. I've been doing all this work. Oh, every morning I go and I sit on that cushion and I think about these things and I haven't gotten there yet. And you said there were 6 causes and 1 result. And I just felt like once I got to that 1 result, I could just be on vacation. But what Lama Tsongkhapa is saying here is like, this conclusion is one that is, if it really happened, it won't go away unless you lose it altogether. And it's like 10 minutes it's a very short period of time on the path where you can lose it in terms of how long the path is. So, once you get this mind, it's a main mind that just is always there and unceasingly day and night thinks in a certain way. So, however, this isn't enough. First, increase your faith as much as possible by contemplating the good qualities of the Buddha's body, speech, mind, and enlightened activities, as previously mentioned in the section on going for refuge. Where is that? Oh, it's in that really high teaching section on the small scope. So Lama Tsongkhapa, this is why it's teaching shared in common with beings of small capacity, teaching shared in common with beings of medium capacity. We have to practice all of the things that the Buddha taught. In all of it, in it. They set foundations for us to realize bodhicitta. And then once we think that we have bodhicitta, we use that teaching to think about how awesome the Buddha's body, speech, mind, and enlightened activities are. So we know we want to become a Buddha. We reinforce it. We seal it. We know that's what we want. And that's in the section on refuge, the excellent qualities of the Buddha's body, speech, mind, and enlightened activities. That's what makes us want to go for refuge. That's what makes us have faith in the Buddha, faith that the Buddha can free us from fear. These are the 2 causes of refuge, fear and faith. The Buddha's excellent qualities make us have faith in him or her, have faith that they're an adequate source of refuge for us. They can protect us from the fear of cyclic existence. These excellent qualities then carry forward to here, because we're saying now we want to become that being that we're taking refuge in. You see how this all has to be there, or it's not going to work. Do not be satisfied with partial instructions, Lama Tsongkhapa said. Do you know why? Because he writes like this, and he knows how hard it is to get bodhicitta, and he knows how faked out you can become by your own mind. He knows people are running around saying, he's a real bodhisattva. I'm a real bodhisattva. Oh, he's a bodhisattva. I'm a bodhisattva. But when you find out what a bodhisattva is, and we'll end on that part, we'll identify it. Lama Tsongkhapa will identify how we know whether we've done the work or not. It says, first, increase your faith. Keep increasing it. Okay, I want to become a Buddha because the Buddha is so awesome. The Buddha has all of these excellent qualities. That's what I want. Because you won't do what the Buddha did because it's real hard if you aren't sure you want what the Buddha's got. Then, as it is taught that faith is the basis of aspiration, and the beginning of Arya Nagarjuna's precious garland. Between the two, wisdom and faith. Wisdom is the chief, but faith is its prerequisite. Thus, as it is taught that faith is the basis of aspiration, develop the desire to attain those good qualities from the depths of your heart and induce a certainty that is absolutely necessary to it, that it's absolutely necessary to attain omniscience, even for your own welfare. Although there are many causes for the development of the spirit of enlightenment, the concentration of the Tathagata sublime wisdom gesture sutra, cited in the first stages of meditation by Acharya Kamalashila, says that it is most special to develop on your own, overcome by compassion. So how do we know? Did it work? Have I done it? Identifying bodhicitta, the fruit of this training. Okay. We got to the fruit. We got to the result. You told me there were 6 causes and a result. Okay, so I get it. I've got to just seal in my result harder. And once I've sealed this, like, yeah, I must do it. I must become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. Once I've sealed this in, okay, how do I know it worked? The general definition of the spirit of enlightenment follows the meaning of that given in the ornament for clear knowledge, or the ornament for clear realizations. Lord Maitreya's Abhisama Alamkara. It says the development of the spirit of enlightenment is the desire for perfect enlightenment for others' welfare, cited earlier. With respect to its subdivisions, engaging in the Bodhisattva's deed states in the Arya Stalk Sutra and says that it is both aspirational and engaged. Just as one distinguishes between wishing to go and going, similarly, the learned should understand the division of these two in accordance with the sequence. Although there are many disagreements about what these two are, know that the aspiration is either may I become a Buddha or I will become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. And that as long as you have not taken the Bodhisattva vows, it is the aspirational spirit that is present. Now, there are aspirational Bodhisattva vows also, but the engaged Bodhisattva vows are what it's speaking of here. And it says whether or not you are training in the deeds of, and whether or not you're engaging in the 6 perfections. So whether or not you have the vow, if you're an engaged Bodhisattva, in most schools, we'll leave it at that. Once you take the Bodhisattva vow and engage in the 6 perfections. For the Prasangika school, the highest school, it's the moment after you get aspiring bodhicitta. But moment is a long story. So we'll just leave it at that. So day and night. So when we look at the 3 principal aspects of the path, and when we'll end, then we'll end. What's the definition? What's the measure of renunciation? Renunciation, the measure of actually achieving it, is when day and night you think of nothing else, just day and night, you're only thinking of getting out of cyclic existence. You don't, like, 5 minutes you think of something other than getting out of cyclic existence. That doesn't occur when you have real renunciation. So when you have real bodhicitta, you don't take 5 minutes off. You day and night want to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. You have a goal day and night. You don't take 5 minutes off. Even if you're having a nice chai, you're having it for the sake of becoming a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. We know that there's the 2 points there, which is the goal and the intention for the goal being Buddhahood. And the intention for the goal is you want to do it for the sake of all sentient beings. So you have a mind that unceasingly day and night wishes to work for the welfare of all sentient beings. This is what a bodhisattva's mind is like. It says that once you take it says the aspirational spirit of enlightenment is the initial intent. May I become a Buddha in order to benefit all beings. The engaged spirit is present once you've taken the vows and engaged in accumulating the collections of merit and sublime wisdom. There's a lot of arguments about this, but I won't elaborate on them here. Even Lama Tsongkhapa's like, oh man, there's a lot of arguments out there about this, and we're not going to get into them. And those arguments are about, like, oh, I will become a Buddha. Is that engaged? Or may I become a Buddha? Is that the only aspiring? Is it the second moment that it becomes engaged bodhicitta? Or is it when you take the bodhisattva vows? It doesn't really matter. It will matter once you're a bodhisattva. So figure out that first. Become a bodhisattva, and then worry about if you're an engaged bodhisattva or not at that point. And then study all of the authentic texts and decide for yourself what makes sense. So, yeah. Maybe next week we'll do one more wrap up on this, encompassing this kind of last step and then summarizing what we've gone over so far. And then the following week, as long as everything works out and I'm not dead, that could happen. I could die right after I'm done talking now. I may not even get to the next week where we have one more class on altruism and bodhicitta according to the 7-point cause and effect for realizing the mind that aspires to enlightenment, because death will come. Nothing can stop it. We have no clue when that's going to happen. And the only thing that will help us when that death comes is the Dharma. And what we'll bring with us are the positive deeds we've done and the negative deeds we've done. And the positive deeds we've done will produce happiness. And the negative deeds we've done will produce suffering. We can produce our future experience. And it's not going to feel any like less us in terms of the I we're grasping at than it does now. We won't remember, I won't remember Jeff. I'll think I'm whoever I'm imputing myself as, and I won't remember Jeff. And what will produce that experience will be what I did before. And if I can really get this right in this life, I can create a continuity so I don't forget what Jeff did. So I don't forget what I did. I'm using the third person because I won't be Jeff anymore. I'll be someone or something else, hopefully a human able to practice the Dharma with the 8 leisures and 10 opportunities. Hopefully. Hopefully I'll be able to meet with Lord Maitreya, the future Buddha. Really, these are the aspirations we have. This is why we think of the merit field, so we always in all of our lives connect with the source, the foundation of all of our good, and that's the teacher. And all our lives, may we never be separated from our perfect lamas. May we bask in the glory of the Dharma, and may we fulfill perfectly every single good quality of every level and path and become Vajradhara ourselves, as Lama Tsongkhapa says at the end of this beautiful poem, The Foundation of All Good Qualities. So we'll stop here. And also I want to next week read Pabonka Rinpoche's summary of this section in his short commentary on the foundation of all good qualities. So yeah, use authentic sources. If you're going to give a talk or anything, make sure you're using authentic sources. Make sure that you're not making anything up or making something new for the Dharma, because a perfect kind of understanding of mode of existence and bodhicitta doesn't need to be tarnished. And when we tarnish a system that brings about the highest amount of happiness for sentient beings, it makes us create an enormous amount of non-virtue for ourselves, because we're actually poisoning people, poisoning them for their future, poisoning them for their present. The byproduct of these practices actually is a pretty calm, happy mind in this life. So you're taking that from them because you're giving them something fake out of ego. So don't do that, please. I beg all of you, anyone who's giving talks or trying to share the Dharma, share the authentic Dharma. Share what can be traced back to the sutras and the tantras and the Kanjur, the authentic, and the Tanjur, the authentic Indian commentaries. Please don't share with us your new ideas, because there were a lot of ideas before 2,600 years ago, and there'll be a lot more after that. But there's only one idea that will get us out of cyclic existence, and that's the one that that states that things don't intrinsically exist, and that the self-cherishing attitude is the one is to blame for all of the negativities that we have. And the idea that things intrinsically exist, that we do, and that everything around us does, and that you do, that thinking that things intrinsically exist is the key to opening the door of suffering over and over and over again. And understanding the lack of intrinsic existence of all phenomena and the downfalls of the self-cherishing attitude And then practicing the path that gets rid of those two things is the key to the supreme palace, supreme destination of Buddhahood. We'll do a mandala offering and stuff. Concluding mandala offering and dedication prayer. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this is a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. I dedicate whatever virtues I have collected for the benefit of the teachings and of all sentient beings, and in particular for the essential teachings of Venerable Losang to shine forever. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. Any mistakes that I've made, may they be purified by the mantra of Vajrasattva. I don't think that I've made any mistakes, but I am not a Buddha. I'm not a Bodhisattva. I don't have clairvoyance. So it's very possible that I could make a mistake. And the biggest mistake that I can make is not teaching to scope, because I don't know what your aptitudes are, because I'm not realized enough. May I become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. Om Benzo Sata Samaya Manimalaya Benzo Sata Sina Vajita Dila Me Vazuka Me Vazuka Me Vanurag Me Vazavasiti Me Braja Zava Kamazuji Me Kinam Chikan Guru Ma Bhagavad Zava Tata Gata Benzo Mama Moga Benzo Baba Ma Zamaya Zava Om Ve. May we always be protected by Paul the Lama. Jorama Jorama Jojarama Jujikala Raja Moromo Aja Daja Dunjo Rula Rula Hong Jo Hong. She's the wrathful emanation of Aryatara who protects the Dharma. I dedicate all this virtue to emulate the knowledge of the hero Manjushri, and likewise Samantabhadra as well. With whatever dedication is praised as supreme by all the conquerors who traverse the three times, I also dedicate all my roots of virtue for the sake of auspicious deeds. In the heavenly realm of Tibet, surrounded by a chain of snow mountains, you are the source of all benefit and help for beings. All-powerful Avalokiteshvara, Tenzin Gyatso, please remain until samsara ends. That was the long life prayer for His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama. The true source of happiness in our world. The foundation of all good qualities is our kind Lama, our Lord, our root Lama, His Holiness Tenzin Gyatso, the wish-fulfilling jewel in our world, breathing the same air as us, walking on the same earth as us. May his life be secure for hundreds and hundreds of kalpas. May he remain in this world. May Chenrezig continue to emanate in this world until samsara is no more and every single sentient being in the universe has achieved the state of Buddhahood. And now a prayer called a complex yogi poses as a simple monk, which is a prayer of supplication to my root teacher, Namgyal Khensur Geshe Wangdak Rinpoche. A complex yogi poses as a simple monk. Homage to Khensur Geshe Wangdak Rinpoche, our precious spiritual friend who is inseparable from Aryatara. I fully prostrate, covering as many atoms of the earth as possible to your pure body, speech, mind, and enlightened activities. I offer to you drinking water, bathing water, flowers, incense, candles, scented water, food, and music purified by Om 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 Om. The rarity of having 1 million wish-fulfilling gems is a common occurrence compared to meeting with a holy teacher like you, who placed the complete path to Buddhahood in our childlike hands. Just like Lord Atisha, who came to Tibet with a lamp to dispel the darkness of ignorance, you, kind abbot, arrived in the West with a lineage purer than a diamond and begged us never to be satisfied with partial instructions. The teachings of the extensive deeds and profound view lineages flowed from your lips like nectar for our ears that elucidated the teachings of beings of three capacities. Now that sound has stopped. All composite things are impermanent. You told us that all of your teachers passed away and understood this sadness, entreating us to continue our studies. The Buddha does not wash away the negativities of beings, nor does he remove their miseries by his hands. His spiritual realizations aren't transferred to them. It's by teaching the truth of suchness that beings are liberated. We are not prepared to take this difficult journey to the highest goodness of Buddhahood without your continued guidance. The sadness in our hearts would be too overwhelming. May you swiftly return to this world and take care of us in all of our lives, wherever we may be, never leaving our hearts in crowns. May all sentient beings perfectly realize renunciation, bodhicitta, and the correct view of emptiness, so they know who you really are. Thank you so much, everybody, for listening. I'm sorry it went a little bit over. I hope this is helpful for your mind, and I hope that you implement these teachings into your daily life and practice them on a daily basis on your meditation cushion. And as Acharya Kamala Shila says, off of your meditation cushion. At all times in our lives, may we practice this. And if you are, I want to say thank you for making the world a better place. Have an awesome, awesome day, night, morning, whatever time zone you're in. And I'll see you next time.